Nicholas works for the PA House Democratic Caucus. He's the executive director, and he's had an amazing political career. He's been a district director for U.S. Congress full-time, and he's been a deputy chief of staff for the PA House Democratic Caucus in the past. So, and right now, as I mentioned, he's the executive director. So, Nicholas, take it away.
Thanks. And also, just to clarify, I'm executive director of the House State Government Committee. So not in leadership, just to, I don't want to overinflate my credentials. Okay. But anything that's, related to state government committees, so all the Act 77 stuff, congressional redistricting, everything from that to land transfers, I unfortunately have to live with and deal with on a daily basis. So I guess we kind of covered everything for Act 77. I'll just add that I do believe the courts will uphold it, so I wouldn't panic. I don't think it's going anywhere, but until we're sure, it's always going to be safer to use absentee. And then as for the question on ID, it's a option 1, 2, or 3. You don't have to conclude all 3, just one. So it's your driver's license or the last 4 of your social or the alternative identification. So don't feel that you need to include all of those. But moving on from that, do I need to, Bernie, do they need me to go over what these 2 bills do or just the process behind them? Are we already familiar with them? Oh, you're muted, Bernie.
I see that. I forgot. Real briefly, I did put it in the agenda and I went over it last month, but just very briefly, just say what they are, just in a short sentence.
Yeah, both.
Great. All right. So nutshell, House Bill 2207 is Grove's bill. This guarantees Republican dominance and reapportionment by stacking the membership of the Reapportionment Commission, and essentially through a process of failures to create a plan, allow each chamber by a majority vote to directly choose the voters in their districts. The House and the Senators would each get to vote on their own House and Senate redistricting plans through a majority vote and just pass their own redistricting plans. So this is Seth Grove's attempt, or the Republican House attempt, to undo the IRC and create a process that they're in control of. Since they're not in control of the IRC process, it did not benefit them this cycle. As you saw from Bettinghoff's comments during the hearings, he is quite unhappy about this. He's actually on his way out, but the rest of Republicans would like to change the way this is done. This has not yet passed once, much less twice. So this is not an immediate threat or concern. But it is worth noting that if this were to pass finally, and I'll go over that process shortly, but once it became law, it would trigger an immediate redistricting mid-cycle. So despite the fact that it isn't a census, if this passed in 2024, we'd have redistricting again in 2024. The Republicans would get to draw their own maps. So this is a big threat to democracy and something to be aware of. But I think the negative attacks on it and the various advocacy groups that are going after the R's for this blatant power grab have made it politically difficult even for them to move, even with their base. But that's something that the pressure needs to be kept up, because it's not, ultimately the only people they're responsive to are their voters. And it's up to them to decide whether, guaranteeing their ability to maintain power through redistricting is worth angering their own voters or not. So we'll have to see what happens with it. But for now, 2207 may not come up again, but we don't know. But it has not yet passed for the first. House Bill 38 is Russ Diamond's bill. And this is a constitutional amendment to create regional judicial districts for election of appellate court justices and judges, and essentially allow judicial gerrymandering, where you'd be electing judges in districts that the Republicans themselves draw. This has passed once. Again, while this one is not my committee, I have been watching it closely. It does have to pass a second time through a second consecutive session in order for it to be put to voters. But it's important that advocacy continue in order to prevent that from happening, because this is a blatant attempt to gerrymander one of the last branches of government that they don't have direct control of, and that's the judiciary. In terms of the process, and I guess I'll take questions at the end on both the bills and the process, but in terms of the process for a constitutional amendment, it doesn't go to the governor, which is why they're doing a lot of things through constitution.
I walked this morning here, and it kind of came down like
somebody's hot micing.
Snow, and it covered the
but
it's gone.
So regardless of whether it's...
He left yesterday, she and her one.
Please mute your speakers if you're not the one speaking.
Leah, who's her friend from.
Barbara, mute.
Anyway, I'm thinking, she should be back by noon and today. And I'm thinking,
I see Tony's comment. Tony, we miss you, buddy. You retired too soon. Anyway,
I couldn't. I'm like Nicholas. That's a familiar name. I just didn't think it was the same one. How
Yeah.
about that?
I was going to give you a shout out, but I didn't want to draw too much attention to it. But good to see you, buddy. So anyway, I'll just keep going, guys. Hopefully they'll figure out their hot mic situation in a minute. Anyway, for this has to pass 2 consecutive sessions before it goes to voters. There's a 3-month advertising requirement once it passes, but the actual practical requirement's greater than that because they have to advertise it for 3 months, but they also before that have to come up with plain English statements for each, which have to get approved. They have to come up with translations of those statements for various major languages. They have to actually, buy the advertising space. So there's a practical limit of more like 5 months than 3 months. So we're actually already past the point where a constitutional amendment could be on the primary ballot, but we're not past the point where a constitutional amendment could be on the general election ballot. The Republicans generally prefer it on primary ballots because it's lower turnout, and if it's a big question, they want it to be decided by super voters because their super voters turn out more regularly than ours. But that also depends on who has a contested primary. In this case, they have a contested primary for governor, and we don't. So there's going to be an excitement gap in the primary as well, they think. So if they wanted it to be on the ballot, they would have wanted it for the primary, and it's not on in time for the primary. So will it come up in the general? It's possible still, but I don't know that it benefits them strategically. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Advocacy needs to definitely continue in order to prevent that from happening. Hopefully that answered all the questions on process. Obviously, once this new legislature
like Brennan, he's
so everything starts over again, repass constitutional amendments for the second time for a consecutive session. So.
And then Brennan seems to. I this morning I texted him.
Hopefully, we'll see.
The administrator can mute the person's mic if they, whoever the administrator is.
Didn't take. So he said it was just great.
Click on the top 3 dots in her box. You can mute her.
I'm sure he has moments, So I asked Kevin, I said, is your mom lived in graduation? And he said, well, they're opening it back up again in March. But she's thinking maybe it would be better to do.
I hope you're having a good day.
Yeah.
Leave a message or call back. Thanks. Bye.
Well, I think he's almost over anyway. Like we can hear over the talking, right? Is there any questions about the bills or about the process there?
I actually have a question going back to the, promoting use of the absentee ballot. We're going to be looking at that issue on our letters to the editor work group. Is that something we can publicly state in letters to the editor, or is it better not to?
I wouldn't. I think we should all act under the assumption that it will be upheld as law. I have no reason to believe that our PA Supreme Court, with its current makeup, is going to overturn Act 77. If it did overturn it, there'd be, major chaos. It would add, fuel to the fire for Republican claims of a stolen election. It would cause a hell of a lot of confusion this close to an election, certainly. And just on a constitutional ground, I don't think that they really have any merit in overturning it, honestly. But there's a reason why we made all the provisions, or almost all the provisions of it non-severable. If they get rid of mail-in voting, we also get back straight ticket voting. And straight ticket voting made a big impact in that last cycle, or that last election cycle we had, where we saw people like Darby, who had been in the House a long time, lose their seats by slim margins. We had a lot of really close elections that essentially were decided by that straight ticket voting elimination. So that does cut both ways if they do overturn Act 77. But I don't think acting as if it's a possibility helps, because I really don't think it's a big possibility. I think the more credence we give it, I think we don't want to breathe fire on it, right?
Right. Okay, got it. And then did you say that Kerry Benninghoff is either going to step down as leader, or will he be not supported?
I believe he's going for new employment. I don't think he's running for re-election.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We had a bunch of announcements recently on both sides of the aisle, and I think Benninghoff's one of them. So now there's going to be an all out. I know Cutler's on his way out. If Benninghoff's not, if he does run for re-election, his position as leader is not certain. Benninghoff will probably go for leader, or sorry, he'll probably try to go for speaker. But other people are more charismatic and more well liked who may be ahead of him. So Benninghoff's position in leadership itself is in jeopardy with Cutler on his way out. So it's not certain. I'm not sure if Benninghoff's running for re-election or not. He may not, and he may take another job if he sees the writing on the wall and losing his position as leader and not being speaker either. Like that's a big step down. But like if he sticks around, he may not have any power. We'll have to see. It's an interesting power struggle on the other side. Grove really wants to be speaker or leader, and
Oh, no.
a long time.
Oh, Lord.
I know. Trust me, I like it about as much as you do it. I have to see him and Don Kiefer multiple times a week, especially for kids. So, perfect.
Wow.
We feel for you.
Nicholas, this is Doug Hope. Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Okay. Yeah. Have you seen any polling on the Republican side as far as who's leading for governor?
No, I'm not really privy to any other than what's out there in the public. I mean, I think for governor, I mean, Josh Shapiro is absolutely our best chance. He's our only candidate. I have no idea what's going to happen on the Republican side because there's more candidates every day. Every time I turn on the news, there's somebody else running for governor or as Republican. For lieutenant governor, I think, it's anybody's game right now. So I have no idea, honestly.
So any other questions? Okay, well, I think